Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Thrashcast, where, thrash metal is definitely our religion. Thanks for tuning in. I want to thank my two co-hosts, Billy and Ken, who are here with me. Always super fun. Yep. How are you guys this evening?
Very, very good, sir. How about yourself?
Oh, this is great. And just for everybody out there, this is my first time hosting, so I'm kind of a bit of a milestone, a little slow getting out of the blocks here, but hey, better late than never. So,
yep.
But no, looking forward to this episode for sure. What about you guys?
Oh, absolutely. Of course.
Yeah. Another great album.
Yeah. Definitely. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Just want to thank everybody who's been tuning in and watching us on YouTube and listening to us on Spotify. Where you can find us, for anybody new who's looking for us, is www.horrormetalsounds.com and YouTube at Horror Metal Sounds at kenji.2864. As well as you can listen to us, as I said, on Spotify. And, that's great. The Spotify is perfect for when you're just, you're heading out in the vehicle. You want something to listen to. Perfect. So you can get us like two ways for sure. So absolutely awesome. So today, what we're going to be talking about is the Megadeth Rust In Peace album. But before we get into that, oh yeah, Billy's got it there.
Billy's got it.
I got it there.
Nice.
One of my most favorite, one of the three, I know all three of us love this album. But before we get into that, we want to talk about what we're spinning now and maybe a couple of new news items. And Ken, why don't you take us off from the top here?
Sure. So looking at like a news item, I didn't find much, but there is a recently announced tour for Nervosa. Nice. They're announcing their first ever headlining tour. So they're coming to Toronto in October. They'll be touring the album Jailbreak, which they released last year. And on this tour, they're bringing Lich King, which I love that band. Yep. And they're bringing Hatred as support. That's great band. The one cool thing about it that I could tie into Horror Metal Sounds is that their bass player is Selpultura. Now, she was one of the very first musicians that we interviewed at Horror Metal Sounds way back at the start. She had a band called Afterblood, and she sent us a request, and so we did an interview with her. She's a really, really cool person. So she's now joining the band on bass. I think she joined last year. So that's actually really cool. But that's like the only little news bit I have. So I think I'll probably check that tour out when it comes to Toronto.
Wicked.
And as for the spinning, now since we're talking about Megadeth, of course, I was listening to first of all, I was listening to Damn the Machine, if you remember this album.
I haven't seen that. Yes.
Yeah. I dug it out because I like Chris Poland, and this was an interesting concept for like a prog metal band, a one album. It's unfortunate that they didn't really go any further than that. But I started listening to that this week since we're talking about Megadeth and going back and listening to their past guitarists. So that was kind of cool. I haven't heard that album in a long time.
Yeah.
And then I started spinning this, which I know we're going to talk about tonight. Mr. Friedman and Dragon's Kiss.
Oh, wicked.
This is an absolutely stunning album. And this is the album, by the way, that actually got him the job with Megadeth, because he actually sent this to Dave. And apparently, from what I heard, that Dave actually interviewed a whole bunch of guitarists before Marty got the job. Like apparently he wanted to give it to Dimebag, and Dimebag wouldn't accept unless they brought in Vinnie Paul on drums. But Dave didn't want Vinnie Paul, so he said, "Nah, I'm not gonna join your band." So I thought that was interesting. And eventually, we got this gentleman right here, and history is made. So that's what I've been listening to the last little while. That's all I have.
And I think at that time too, he was on the verge of bringing Chris Poland back. Like
yes.
Because then they were looking at Dimebag, and then he said that he had him come in, and he just blew him away and hired him pretty much on the spot. So that's cool.
Supposedly what I read is that Chris was going to consider coming back, but his manager had told
Yes.
him not to do it. No, don't come back. So he didn't, which was probably, what he did come back on the system has failed, but
Yeah.
it was cool. And then also don't forget they also I think they were also courting Jeff Waters at one point too.
Right.
To come in. So that's kind of interesting, those old guitarists. But Marty got the gig, and rest is history.
Wicked.
And
Billy, what have you got for us?
And good for Dave, because
yeah,
I would argue Marty did more for Dave than Dave did for Marty. But anyways,
absolutely.
So yeah, and that's a great album. I love all the the old Shrapnel label stuff, right?
Yeah, same.
Then Marty and Jason Becker in Cacophony was
Yes.
fantastic too, right?
Yeah.
And then sadly, the two like amazing guitar superstars, Jason and Marty, and then Jason got like Lou Gehrig's disease, and he's been kind of bedridden for the last like 30 years, sadly. But
well, he joined Van Halen, so he joined David Lee Roth first.
Yeah. And then he started getting all the symptoms, and unfortunately, he's been in rough shape for years and decades.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So in terms of wood spinning, so I guess similar to Ken, but maybe a little newer. This is like fresh off the press about 2 weeks ago. Working on a review for this as well. That'll be coming out. But this is Marty's most recent solo album called Drama, and definitely not quite the shredder that Ken was showing. This is more about like feeling and has classical instruments, and so it's very much a different side of Marty, but still excellent guitar playing. So yeah, if you're okay sort of deviating slightly from metal, it's worth hearing that for sure. So yeah, in terms of news items, so a couple items. One of my favorite bands, I grew up as a youngin in Montreal, DBC, the Dead Brain Cells. Got in what was that, probably like December of last year. They came out and said they're in the studio, and so last week they posted that they've apparently got 2 songs mixed and mastered and ready to go. That'll be out soon. So dying to hear what that sounds like, right? Because you had they only have 2 albums. The first was like early crossover thrash, and then the other was like a super technical masterpiece. So I'm not sure what version we're gonna get. So that should be interesting. And then the other news item that came out today was for Annihilator fans. So he announced on all his social media pages that they're going to do a live stream. Jotted the date down, June 29th, so coming up pretty quickly. I mean, basically, it's all over the world. So times are funny in some places, like where he is, it'll be like 8 o'clock at night, but where we are in Eastern Canada, Eastern time zone, it'll be 3 p.m. So yeah, and no repeats, no replays. You got to be on it or you get nothing. So that's kind of interesting. Stu Block is going to do the vocals.
Cool.
And a tribute to Randy Rampage, who of course passed away. So he's obviously not able to do it. Jeff's talking about a cool Alice in Hell documentary that's going to play as part of the podcast as well. So I went on and bought a ticket. So I was really curious to how much it would cost. It was pretty good at $20 US.
Yeah. Oh, not bad. That's good.
So yeah, and so he's going to play they're going to play Alice in Hell front to back, and then a mini greatest hits after the album's played.
Wicked.
So yeah, that should be pretty cool.
Hell yeah.
And the other tour, did we announce that last week, guys? I know WASP isn't exactly thrash, but they're out on tour, going on tour with Death Angel.
No.
I don't remember if we said
we didn't discuss it.
No, we didn't. No.
Yeah, so that's US and Canada, just like the Nervosa tour, October and November. Man, October and November is like really packed, right? Like everybody's going out, like Testament, Creator, like just everybody, like it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like from right after like September hits, it's all hell's gonna break loose. So yeah, that's it for me in terms of updates.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I've got just one update, and it kind of affects you guys for sure in Toronto. Sepultura's got a farewell North American tour that was just, I think, announced yesterday or today. They're going to be touring with Obituary, Agnostic Front, and Claustrophobia. So, man, that would be a killer show. And you're looking at Toronto and Montreal dates, the October 9th and 10th, I believe it is.
More October.
Yeah, I know. And it starts in early September. I think those are the only two Canadian dates. All the rest are all throughout the US, but really, really cool. And I think they played Toronto last year, I believe.
Yeah, I saw them last year.
Yeah, and I heard they were super. I heard the show was amazing.
Yeah, I mean the show wasn't bad. I just left like a grumpy old guy, right? Because they continue to refuse to play anything from Beneath the Remains.
Yeah.
Which I just have no patience. So this is the anniversary tour, and Sepultura is calling it quits after. If they don't play that album, like it's criminal. Like it truly is.
Yeah.
And they only played one song from Arise as well, and nothing pre-Arise at all, any of the previous albums. So,
oh man,
I just don't get it. Like I know
that blows.
Yeah, I know they're focusing on Derek Green era, and so I get that. But they did do like a lot of Roots material because they're more popular that album. But yeah, so a bit of a tangent, but I think Death Angel was there.
Yes,
if I remember right. Yeah, it was a great show, but I just couldn't get over that they wouldn't even play one song from what I consider the greatest Sepultura album.
Well, they hate Max. They hate Max.
Yeah,
I think.
And I mean, that's the thing. The Cavalera Conspiracy is coming out with the redo of Schizophrenia. Yeah. So that's going to be a wicked. I mean, the first two tracks that have been released, I'm listening to both at the same time going, oh, man. Oh, yeah. Like, I love that album, that Sepultura album. But, boy, the redos on them so far are blowing me away. What about you guys?
Oh, same thing. Awesome.
Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah, I love it.
The best re-recordings ever.
Yeah.
Well, he's honored. The thing is, he's honored that. So, like, they're honoring that raw style with how they were recorded originally. So,
yeah. And I even like, and I gotta admit, I don't like it when they screw around with the album art, but I kind of like it's two separate things. I kind of like it. It's the updated album art's kind of neat, and I can see why you would maybe update it a bit because technically, it's not from the actual band, so it's kind of neat to have a little bit of a division there. Ken, you're our art critic, so what do you think?
Oh, I like it. I like it. Yeah, because they don't want to just like ape the original, so they're kind of like honoring it and updating it, and it's more of a homage. But I like it. When I saw the cover, I was like, oh, this is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Even with these two, even with the last re-recording they did, I love that too. I thought they did a really nice job on that as well.
Wicked. And what I'm spinning right now is I just got in the mail my final collection of my Heathen catalog. So, I was always missing Breaking the Silence. So I got it's not even open because I got so much stuff this weekend with the Black Sabbath box set and everything. But the other one that I'm listening to, not a thrash album, but I wanted to give these guys a little bit of a push on our podcast because it is a killer album. It's the Stormborn Zenith. This band from the UK, it's melodic, heavy metal, kind of has elements of Priest, Dio. You got elements of Maiden in there. It's just such a good album, and I suggest people check it out, pick it up. I got it. I ordered it from I think it was iTunes Records or something, and from the UK. Got it at a fairly affordable price with really good shipping, but it's just a kick-ass album, and definitely, wow, it just blows me away every time I listen to it. So a great album. Everybody should definitely check that out for sure.
Yeah, some fantastic guitar work on that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, it was funny because the day it was released, both you guys were texting. Like we were all texting each other. Man, check this out. Check this out.
Yeah.
It's so cool. But anyways, yeah, no, that's what I'm spinning this week. But boy, yeah, there was a ton of albums that came out this week, and I got a ton of albums delivered, and they're just piling up. I think my wife's ready to divorce me because I don't know where I'm going to put them all. But anyways, I'll deal with that later.
I don't know.
As I see Billy in behind and Ken, they have piles of them behind them as well.
Oh yeah, I got a whole pile of stuff here. CDs
Oh yeah.
galore.
So before we get into the album, I just thought we would, we usually kind of ask a couple of questions just to kind of get the ball rolling. So just a question I posed to you guys, a couple of them here. What do you guys think? I want to know what everybody's opinion is on how has Megadeth fared compared to the others in the big four, like with post 2000s material. And, I really want to hear you guys' input on this because, we talked, we've done show on Anthrax, we've done a show on Metallica, we're possibly going to be doing a show on Slayer at some point. And here we are with Megadeth. So what do you guys think? Billy, I'll start with you. How do you think they've fared up compared to like the big four in the total? How would you say they've done?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? So I was giving some thought to this question, right? I had to go back and remind myself what was post that 2000. I stuck to the rule, right? But yeah, so let's take like we'll go through. There's only four, so it's easy to do a quick walkthrough. So Anthrax, very limited post 2000 output. You essentially got three albums, and so for me, I like two, Worship Music and For All Kings. I rated them both pretty highly when we did the Anthrax podcast. So kind of for me, I think there were three records. So two out of the three were pretty good. Post 2000. Then I go to Slayer, who's probably my favorite of all three bands, but it's going to lean heavily to the classic output there. But so really, four albums post 2000, and I got to be honest, I don't truly love any of them. Like there's a couple songs on each that I dig, but I can't say I love any of those albums. So that unfortunately knocks Slayer a bit out. Metallica is generally pretty weak as well. But I do like Death Magnetic, and I like a couple tracks off Hardwired, but that's where it ends there. So then we go to Megadeth, who hands down has the most output. Like I think I counted like 8 albums, not including Risk, which was like 99, I think. But yeah, and so I left the Risk out. But so for me, really, the best of that is kind of Endgame. For me, I think it's probably from a guitar perspective, one of the better albums of that period. I don't mind Dystopia, and I don't mind the most recent, The Sick, The Dead, and The Dying wasn't bad either. So, so that means for me, 5 out of the 8 albums post 2000. I'm not the biggest fan, a song or two here or there. So I guess in the end, like I don't think any of the big four post 2000 is stellar. I guess if I have to pick out by numbers of albums I like, it probably would be Megadeth and Anthrax end up with the most sort of full albums. But if I think back to our other podcasts, the real winner here is the German Big Four.
Yes.
In post 2000 and the next tier of US thrash, right?
Yes.
The and the Overkill. Like, those 6, 7, 8 bands, including the German Big Four, they largely, you could argue it got a little repetitive over the last decade or so, but those were all incredible, consistent albums post 2000. So yeah, I guess I'm going to cheat and say the winners are not the Big Four. But if I have to pick based on albums I like, I guess Megadeth and Anthrax kind of win.
Nice. What about you, Ken? What are your thoughts?
I'm sort of on Billy's side of things. Like I think the winner is technically Megadeth, and I think some of the post 2000 stuff is pretty good. I really like The System Has Failed. I love that album. I know it's Dave coming back from the hand injury, having that big kind of drawn out battle with Dave Ellison about who actually owned Megadeth, and okay, whatever. But I really like that album. There's something about the songs that I still like, and I still listen to it quite a bit. Um, I agree with Billy. Endgame is actually a pretty solid album. The fact that he's able to bring in like Chris Broderick on board, and that kind of helped. That kind of helped their sound. Dystopia is not too bad. The sick, the dying, and the dead. I really liked. I thought that was somewhat of a comeback record for Dave. The trouble with modern Megadeth, though, is that it's Dave. I don't know his vocals. I'm not really into his vocals now. I don't like them. It
No?
sounds like his voice is shot, and I've even when he's playing live, and I've seen some live footage, I don't like it at all. It just doesn't sound great. But I think I'll agree with Billy on this one. Like even Anthrax, their last two albums were pretty good with Joey, and I think Billy mentioned this on the Anthrax podcast that Joey's actually kind of mellowed with age and is really good. Like his vocals, I think Billy, you said, and I'll quote this: they're much more rich, as you said. And so I think, and I was thinking about that, and I was like, yeah, that's true. Like he's much more suited for the band now than he was back in the day, maybe. But I think, yeah, they're the only two. I can't put Metallica in that. No, not at all. And Slayer, well, no, I'm like Billy. I'm not really into the post 2000 stuff that much.
Right.
So yeah, so for me, it's Megadeth and Anthrax are the two that I would think.
Yeah, and I'd have to agree with you guys. I think the System has failed. I love that album, and that was the World Needs a Hero was okay, but coming out of Risk, which was probably their worst album, you got them looking pretty. It's looking up, and I mean, United Abominations was okay. Endgame was wicked. I liked Dystopia. Wasn't that keen on Super Collider. That was a bit of a miss on my end. And the newest one, I like the newest one, but again, it suffers from a little bit of bloat. It's pretty long, and it's got a lot of tracks on it. But Mission to Mars is a wicked song on that album. And yes, Anthrax's last couple albums have been phenomenal. Slayer, as much as I do love post 2000 Slayer, I mean, I don't love it as much as earlier Slayer, and and Metallica is definitely just I don't mind Hardwired. It's not bad. There's a few good tracks. I think out of maybe the taking 72 Seasons out of it, the two, just you have Death Magnetic and you've got Hardwire. Between the two albums, probably have a really good album in there if you combined part of each, and it would be a much better album. But yeah, no, I tend to agree with you guys. And Billy, you kind of hit it on the head. The next tier of thrash bands, especially if we're just talking American bands, probably a lot more prevalent and more bang on material in their last albums for sure. And you can't argue with the Teutonic Four. I mean, they just keep pumping out great album after album, and for sure, even like Creator's last album, as we talked about before, you've got that little tweaking of it a little bit. I really enjoyed it. I liked it. I thought it was a little bit different without ruining what Creator's all about. So definitely agree. The second question, just a quick summary. I mean, what do you guys think? Like all four of these bands, and I'm always thinking of the big four kind of as they're supposed to be the leaders in this and whatever. What do you guys think? Like, do you think Megadeth suffered from, especially in the more early days? I mean, I know their classic lineup went on for about a good 4 albums, but do you think, and that those were definitely the heyday albums for them, but do you guys think that, what's your guys' thoughts on if they had a more static lineup? And I mean, there's only really one person to kind of blame in this, and that's generally Dave, who tends to be a little bit harder to work with and a little bit harder to kind of nail down. But I tend to think, my opinion is they probably would have hit, you've got Metallica, for instance, who's had higher highs, but I think they've had lower lows. Megadeth's had lower highs, but haven't had the lower lows that say Metallica has. Do you think that would have changed if they would have invested, if Dave would have invested in a longer term band with all his members? Because like, you know, Metallica's had a few changeovers, obviously, you know, with Cliff and then Jason and that, and the original bassist that was in there, and obviously Dave. But I mean, it seems like, you know, just talking those two bands, what's your guys' thoughts on maybe a more solidified lineup with Megadeth? I mean, at this point in the career, it's kind of moot, but, you know, when you think about it going back, Ken, what's your thoughts?
Well, I say no. I say no because I look at Dave. Dave Mustaine is a very, like, he's a controlling person. He's a perfectionist. He's very iconoclastic. So he needs that frizzen to work. So what I there's like a love and hate relationship with Dave in the sense that, yeah, there's always a revolving player of guitar, like a door for players. But the one thing that Dave has done, and I think this is smart, he's always been good at picking out technical players to work with. And I think it's the frizzen thing. It's like he needs to have that frizzen when he's playing with another guitarist. And if they don't work, out they go. And he's proven that. But the amount of, if you look at the players that he's brought in, every album he's had a decent second guitarist to work with.
Right.
And I think that's how I look at it. I think if he would have kept a solid lineup, he would have got bored. I think he would have got bored. I think he plays off that frizzen a lot. To me, that's just that's his personality. And you can see it. I think even with Friedman in the lineup, they did eventually got to Risk, and Risk was awful.
Yeah.
So you can kind of see how it started like a firecracker, and then how it eventually just whittled down to, I don't know, not even, like, really uninspired. So yeah. I say no. I think having a good, like, a solid lineup, I don't know if that would have worked for Dave.
What about you, Bill? Billy, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same lines. It's crazy how many changes there's been, right? Like, but like I truly believe that this is the Dave show. And like, I don't think, I mean, you look at the albums that did, you know, Risk or whatever. I don't blame the musicians. There's not a second I think Dave has given them enough creative freedom to have caused the missteps, right? Like, that's Dave, and Dave wouldn't put up with it. If he didn't want that direction, he would have stopped it. So I think Dave's completely to blame. And I have the example that Ken used, right? I mean, Marty Friedman and Rust in Peace is the greatest album, like, in my opinion, Megadeth ever did. But then Risk is the worst album they ever did. So I mean, so like, having a consistent lineup over that period did them no good. And even, like, I look back to the classic period, right? Like, out of the big four, there was far more changes going on in Megadeth through Rust in Peace. Yeah. And so even the albums everybody likes best had an inconsistent lineup to some degree. So, like, there's absolutely the highs and the lows have never been tied to a consistent lineup. So that's why I think it all falls on Dave's shoulder, right? The misses are his, and a good chunk of the wins are his, although he does benefit from, you know, getting top musicians, of course. But I think when the albums, like, are major missteps, like, they're just, the songwriting, everything is a misstep, right? And there's no way he's letting the band have that type of creative freedom. Like, it's him who's driving those missteps, in my opinion.
Absolutely. No, I agree, guys. It's kind of funny because when I was going through the actual lineup changes, I was like, Jesus, it's like almost, it's just like a revolving door. And then you have Kiko out now. So it's like, you know, what the hell? And it's always very sort of, oh, he left to do this, but then you find out later, yeah, he left because he didn't want to be there, or Dave didn't want him to be there. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of a definite revolving door.
Yeah, it's funny. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, when you look at Wikipedia, and, you know, you go to the section where you see former musicians, they don't even list it. There's a link, and it brings you to a whole page. And it's like, you got to scroll all the way down. There's so many former musicians. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's always the sign of
Yeah.
what are we doing?
Well, you pretty much know why Kiko left, because he just
Yeah,
got bored of like fucking playing second fiddle and then not
yeah,
given the opportunity to be creative, because he's a really creative guitar player.
awesome guitar player.
Yeah, and he's like, if you give the guy that chance, like, my God, dude.
Yeah.
But it is what it
Well,
is.
we're gonna jump into the album. Before we get right into it, though, I'm just gonna give a quick bio just for anybody who's not familiar with what we're talking about. And just a few, and then definitely guys jump in with any information you guys have. I know, Ken, I'm gonna depend on you for the album artwork, because holy cow, when I read about this, and I gotta be honest, as much as it's one of my favorite albums of all time, I didn't realize that was so tied in. So this is great. So Megadeth was founded in 1983 by obviously vocalist Dave Mustaine. It's interesting when you read about it. Obviously his departure with Metallica, and he had kind of a strained relationship in there. He joined Metallica in 1981. He had disbanded his own band Panic before then. When he jumped in with Metallica, he was having issues with them that everybody kind of knows about. He was having some, it became a bit of a megalomaniac, which we all know because it's his, Megadeth is his band, and that's the way he acts there. But, a bit of drug abuse, alcoholism, more so than probably the other guys. Anyways, he ended up, when they were in New York, actually with Anthrax, he ended up kind of on, I believe it was April the 11th, he ended up, 1983, ended up getting fired. So they ended up putting him on a bus and sending him back to Cali. And, on his way back, he, was pretty angry. He ended up writing most of the words to a song for Set the World Afire, which was on their 1988 So Far So Good So What album. So he had he was a visionary, and he came back with that. I think that's great. He ended up moving in with his mother, and he ended up saving up enough money so he could move back into Hollywood. And that's when he bumped into Dave Ellefson. He was the neighbor below him. He could hear him playing, I believe, it's Van Halen song. And, they started hanging around, probably started smoking some cigarettes and whatnot. And they ended up forming Megadeth, which was great. Their first album, the first lineup. So he had, Dave didn't want to be necessarily the actual vocalist. I mean, he had, I believe at one point, even had John Cyrus from Agent Steel, who was a part of the process. And they ended up, he just wasn't a good fit. But and then they eventually Dave just kind of took the reins and went for it. And I think that's pretty good. The original lineup for the first album was Mustaine, Alcilson, Chris Poland, and Gar Samuelson. So, you're looking at, that was the kind of the first group that they had. That came out in 1985. Killing Is My Business and Business Is Good on Combat Records. The album did really well, and then they ended up obviously in 1986 taking out their second album, where they signed a really lucrative deal with Capitol Records with Peace Sells But Who's Buying. That was definitely their massive breakout album. Third album, in 1988, So Far So Good So What, one of my favorite Megadeth albums. And then obviously it was a darker album, very rage album. It kind of had a lot of warts to it. I like the original pressing as opposed to the remaster with it, but really, really cool album. And then we go to the fourth album, which we're going to be talking about here, the 1990 release for Rust in Peace. And, we talk about the 90s so much on this show because there is so much great thrash metal released in 1990. Everybody tends to think in the 90s, we talk about the 90s grunge doing this and metal kind of being pushed to the side. But boy, at the start of the 90s and throughout, thrash metal really, really took off. The lineup for Rust in Peace was Dave Mustaine, obviously, David Ellefson, Marty Friedman on guitars, which, fantastic, and Nick Menza on drums. Just a quick summary of the album. It went platinum in both Canada and the US. It broke in at number 23 on Billboard's Top 200. So a lot of, and they had 4 albums with this lineup. So I consider this lineup maybe the core original lineup more so. I'm sure you guys probably think the same way. It was actually nominated for a Grammy at the 33 Grammy Awards, which we don't really care about. But hey, you know, this is Megadeth coming in, and wow, what an album! So you know, what do you guys think, Billy? What do you think of how this kind of came about with you know, with Dave leaving Metallica and bam, coming up with this band?
Yeah, no, I think yeah, like Megadeth was yeah, good on Dave, obviously, right? For not, I mean, he wasn't in probably the best space, so he could have spiraled and went nowhere. So yeah, kudos to him. I probably wasn't the biggest like fan of the first album. And I don't want to give away our rankings towards the end here, but yeah, like Megadeth is probably like I enjoy like some of the Megadeth albums are awesome. Like they're just like right up there, and others, not so much for me. But that's all, of course, a matter of personal taste, as always. But yeah, no, Dave really did a good job, and like we said before, the smart thing Dave does is he does surround himself with some good musicians, so that's always helps as well. Like I never really liked his complaining like all through the years, like about Metallica, right? I mean, you've done great, right? Megadeth is a great band. You're part of the big four with Metallica. None of the other big four are anywhere near as big as Metallica, so you got nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
And I would argue, this is his masterpiece, and it sits like right up there with the best that Metallica has to offer, in my opinion.
And Ken, I mean, I really want to lean on you for the album artwork. As
Sure.
Billy showed it up there. I mean, wow. I read about it, and I'm going to let you take it away because man, this is so cool.
Yeah, so like well, it's done by Ed Repka, who did, Peace Out Who's Buying, and Ed, of course, did every major thrash band back in the day. Now the cover is interesting because the whole concept is the Hangar 18, and that was actually the idea for Hangar 18 came from Nick Menza. Menza was the one who went to Dave and mentioned the whole idea of the Hangar 18 concept. So you get Vic Rattlehead there holding up kryptonite. That is Superman kryptonite, according to Dave. Dave is confirmed that's what he's holding. And behind him, you get Gorbachev, you get Bush, you get the German president, and you get the Japanese prime minister, all in the background. Like they're in this like clandestine setting, and they're looking over this alien. So it's a cool concept, and of course the album, everything you see in there does actually tie into the songs. So it's a great album cover. I've always loved it. As soon as I saw it, I was totally like in love with it. I mean, I like Peace Cells a lot too, but this cover is totally awesome. One of my favorites. It's very iconic, I think.
It's a great one.
The artist name is Ed Repka, is it?
Ed Repka, yeah.
Yeah. And has he done the Evil Dead albums as well?
Yes, he did, yes.
Ah, cool. Because you can see kind of similarities there. Yeah.
Yeah. His style is you'll know when you see an Ed Repka cover because he's like everything is done the same way. He did like Nuclear Assault. He
did Death too, right? Some of the early
he did.
albums, yeah.
Yes, he did. Yeah. He did the first Death album cover.
Yeah.
And I think he did he did Leprosy.
I think Leprosy too, yeah.
Yeah, Leprosy, and he did Spiritual Healing.
Bloody, yeah. Which are great covers too.
Oh, those are all great covers. Yeah.
No, that's wicked. Yeah.
And he still does covers to this day. He's still doing like modern thrash album covers, and yeah, he's great. He's super, super great.
Well, when I Googled him, I couldn't believe the amount of albums. Like I was like, man, I own so much of his artwork and didn't even realize it. That's what I love about like the show we do. We kind of attack the album from every angle, and it blew my mind as soon as I found out who he was. I was like, oh, geez, this is great. I mean, he's a big part of my youth and up till now. So that's really, really impressive.
Yeah, he's great. He's one of the best.
Cool. So with that, guys, we're gonna dive right in here. We're heading into the album, and we got track number 1, Holy Wars, The Punishment Due. Ken, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Yeah, Holy Wars is pretty much like an iconic song. That opening riff, you'll never ever not know what that is. You just won't. It's the first single off. I think it's the first single. I think
Yep.
if I'm correct. It is inspired by the Northern Ireland conflict, so Dave threw that in there. The opening riff's a firecracker. It's so great. You get like the first minute and a half of like pure speed metal brilliance, and then Dave, that's the one thing I've noticed with all the songs is that there's at least a good minute, anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute and a half before Dave even starts singing, and I love it. So when he starts singing, it's so great. It's such a great song all the way through. I totally love the song, and the song is basically all about global conflict. So he's talking about all the lyrics are about like the impact of religious warfare. The riffs are great. They're hard. The tempo is supercharged. What a great song! It's a classic Megadeth song, pretty much.
Awesome. What about you, Bill? What do you think?
Yeah, I hate this song. No, I'm just kidding. No, I think it's one of the best metal songs ever written. To be honest, it really is a masterclass in like thrash songwriting. Like most of the album, right? I mean, Dave has some. We talk about Marty, who the lead work on this song and elsewhere is just truly stunning, right? Like, but Dave also contributes some killer like riffs here, like Ken said, the kind of opening riff for sure. I even like Dave's vocals here. Like I've read a lot of like negative stuff about Dave singing on this album, and there's one or two songs it's not my favorite, but this one's like amazing, right? I mean, and then Marty's able to just like he could blister and shred, but his leads also have plenty of feeling and like they're emotive at the same time, and so yeah, like I just it just I would say Marty on this album is the best guitar lead work on any thrash album in the history of thrash metal.
Wicked.
That's kind of my view, like from beginning to end. Like Dave's like a good mix of like he's got his aggressive snarl going, but he also has some melody like in the chorus, so that's really cool. And like the song has a lot of interesting sections, right? Like at about the 2 minute mark, Marty just breaks into this, this like softer melodic like guitar interlude, and then like the song takes off again, and then at like the 4.5 minute mark, there's that amazing like Dave pulls out that riff that sort of gets the song going. That last 2 minutes just completely shreds. It's relentless. Like I love Dave, like the wailings, right? Like he's like mercy killings. The guitar's going crazy. Like it just all works, right? It's complete controlled chaos. I just love the song. Like there's like three sort of distinct sections, and again, just as I said, a masterclass in songwriting. Like I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I echoing what you guys are saying. I mean, this as soon as you hear that opening riff, you know exactly what the hell you're in for. And I would love to go back in time and just watch myself listen to this for the first time, because this was a mind-blowing album, but a mind-blowing song. And I always kind of thought it was almost like two songs in one, because it has kind of a front section and a back section. And at 2:40 with about 2 minutes and 40 seconds, Dave's heavy vocals, like, he doesn't have that high kind of whine and I like his vocals. I mean, I like that, and I know a lot of people don't, but then he turns to more of a heavy, snarly vocal, and it just blows you away. And this is also like a really good drum track as well. I mean, it has everything. And like probably one of the best, if we do, and I'm sure we will do a show at some point on probably our top 20 thrash songs. I'm sure this one will definitely be in it for us, that's for sure. So, but just a wicked song. And one question for you, Ken. It says, I read that the the Punishment Due was kind of based on the Marvel comic book for the Punisher. Would that be
Yeah,
true?
they took that element from the Punisher.
Oh,
So,
cool.
Yeah, from what I understand, Nick Menza is the one who put a lot of creative, like as a drummer, because this is his first, like he was a drum tech for Chuck Bueller
Right.
on the previous album. And so Nick apparently was really big into comic books. He was really big into like UFO conspiracy. So he was the one who pretty much like inspired Dave to write all that. So yeah, that's correct what you said about the Punisher.
Oh, nice, wicked. Yeah, because it's always nice to have it's pretty cool to read something like that. That I wasn't even aware of that from the start. So that's pretty neat. Something I learned, anyways.
Yeah.
So we leave this masterpiece, and Billy, take us into Hangar 18.
Yeah, so another great track, and again,
Yeah.
like opens with some like brilliant guitar riffing again on this track, and like I always say, it can't be a coincidence. This is my favorite Megadeth album, and it happens to have my favorite guitarist of any genre. So there's definitely a connection there. The Risk album aside, that's a miss. But and yeah, like I think we got to call out Nick Menza, right? Like I think
Yeah, he's
really
great.
like on this track and many of the tracks, because the drum and bass is quite forward in a lot of this album. So the rhythm section's out there, which can be unusual for thrash, right? The bass is often not so obvious, but yeah, Nick has some really good like interesting drum fills like throughout the album, and so it's not your just traditional like grooves type drumming. Like I think it's quite good. Also on this track, like there's some good like where Marty's playing and Dave's singing. Like there's actually some vocal guitar melodies here that are going on that stand out. And so you get to like the 3 minute mark, and then it's just guitar heaven, like just breaks loose, right? Like the last 2 minutes of the song. I mean, I was re-listening to this album, like getting ready for tonight, and it never changes, right? Like it's like 2 minutes of guitar solo at the end, like, and
Yeah.
I cannot wipe the smile off my face. It just makes me so happy to hear that. Like it's just incredible. Like another great song. Yeah, brilliant.
And Ken, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so like going back to your question about the cover, so this song like pretty much factors into the album cover art. So the Hangar 18 it's meant to be, or at least as according to the legend of the song, is based on the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It's near Dayton, Ohio, which is like this fortress which they call Hangar 18. And according to legend, as the lyrics go, it's home to an alien spacecraft or bodies, and those extraterrestrial bodies were then taken to Roswell, New Mexico. So that's kind of where the song goes, which is interesting. And I'm not too sure if that's like Dave's inspiration or if it's like Nick's inspiration, but that's generally how the song goes. But I do agree with Billy though. Like the song itself is great, and when you get to that 3 minute mark,
Yeah.
Marty is brilliant. Like it's such a great song. And I even again like you get like it's another single. It's their second single off the album. The opening again is killer right from the start. So you get like that 5 minute, you get that first minute, and then before Dave starts singing, and then the main riff comes in, and it goes. So yeah, it's such a great song. Totally love this song.
Wicked. And I mean, this is like a 1-2 punch. Probably one of the best 1-2 punches in thrash metal. I mean, we're heading back to the first few Metallica albums where the 1-2 punch was great, but like this is just amazing. And Ken, I gotta pick at you for a sec because I gotta pick your brain because you're the pop culture kind of sci-fi / horror guy. But in the video for Hangar 18, there's some like I think I see Mac and Me, the alien from that B movie. that was in there in the background. And I think there might even be a little shot of Johnny Five from Short Circuit or something. Or there's all these kind of aliens from different maybe B movies and pop culture references. Did you notice that as well?
Yeah. There's like Life Force. There's reference to at least like Invaders from Mars, Life Force. There's several. They're just little snippets, but if you watch it a couple times, you can pick them out. So I thought that was a neat little like reference to like, like classic sci-fi horror films from the past.
Yeah. But no, I mean, this is an amazing song, and I absolutely love it. I believe this was written. For part of it was written in Dave's first band, Panic, I believe.
Oh, okay,
yeah. Part of this that I read. So, and but anyways, it's just an absolute wicked song, and I mean, deserves to be a single, and probably one of their most anticipated songs live for whenever you see them. Megadeth is famous for not technically mixing up their live shows, so especially with their newer material, and this and the first song obviously would be a staple. So, Ken, why don't you lead us into Take No Prisoners, song number 3?
Yeah, this song is okay. It's not one of my favorites. I don't mind it. Like, there's a lot of up tempo, of course. Like, you get like the first like 50 seconds of some pretty good thrash and some good riffing, and then again Dave will kick in with the vocals. The song's like essentially like an anti-war song, or an anti-war anthem. So like he's talking about the irony of the double standard of being in a war. So it's an okay song. It's short. It's okay, but it's not one of the songs that I love, but I don't mind it. But it's hard to follow up where you get these two great songs and you get this. Okay, so you get kind of a break, but I think it's okay. It's short, sweet, and gets to the point.
Yeah, I guess, following up those two songs, I mean, song number 3, I still think it's a good 1, 2, 3 punch on the album. Okay. I like it. Yeah. I think it's got a wicked intro. The gang vocals are great in it, and I think it's got a really good groove. And I really like Dave's vocals on this. I think they really shine. What are your thoughts, Billy?
Yeah, I'm kind of like probably leaning a bit more towards Jim, but I think Ken still has a great point. So yeah, I think it's a strong song still, but I mean, but it's not as good as the two that came before it, nor is it as good as the one that comes after it. So it's kind of just where it sits, right? Like, but again, it's good, right? Like just like Ken said, right? Like it's some good like clean thrash riffing to start this out. There's some pretty good drum work on the album. This is like Ellison's bass is like really like forward on this track, and so he gets a bass solo in here. And I mean, I always found like Ellison. I mean, he's no Steve DiGiorgio, so you're not going to get like crazy creative stuff, but like I mean, it's solid, and I always appreciate the bass forward, so I like it. Like I think Ken mentioned, or Jim, you did the backing vocals. Like this is where like you don't expect that. Like Megadeth is not on this album. Backing vocals is not huge, so it's kind of cool to have it come in on this track. I mean, the chorus is pretty catchy. Of course, Marty's lead work is great. So yeah, I think it's good. Like I like it when Dave's like shouting, "Take no prisoners, take no." And then you got Marty just soaring in the background, right? Like it's pretty cool. Like it's hard for me to hate anything Marty does. So I'm gonna be honest. So it's a good one. But yeah, it's definitely not as good as track 1, 2, and 4.
Yeah. Would agree.
No, I agree totally. And yeah, I like it, and it's just I think it's got a good spot. I mean, it like you guys said, it's hard to follow up from those two, but anyways, it's a great track for sure. And it's and a quicker track too, like at 3:28. You're not, you kind of get to business and get it over with fairly quick. So that leads into Five Magics, track 4. Billy, you're up first.
Yeah, I know. So I've already kind of given it away. I think it's another masterpiece. Like again, the songwriting, some really good sections to the song, like some good sudden and fast tempo changes that just sort of highlight the strength of the songwriting on this album. But you kind of get the first part, the first 2 minutes, and it's like Dave Ellison's upfront bass. You got Dave doing some strong riffs, and then like melodic Marty's there as well doing the melodic leads. But then the song just takes off at 2 minutes. I really like Dave's vocals on this track. Like he has like a good like vocal tone, and yeah, his phrasing's really good. I think it's one of his better ones. I really like the addictive like bridge before the chorus, like where Dave's just singing "I master five magics." Like it's very simple, but it's incredibly like effective. It's got like that evil spoken word that pops up in the track. So
Yes.
that's really cool. Then you get like they're back to the galloping thrash riffs. Yeah, and then at like 4.5 minutes, another great Dave riff. Then Marty just takes the song home with his solo mode all the way. So yeah, I love it.
Ken, what are your thoughts, Ken?
Oh, I agree, Billy. This is a great song. And it's funny because there's like a supernatural element to the song. Well, lyrically, anyways, and or a supernatural fantasy kind of element, because basically he's talking where he's singing about like this unnamed protagonist who decides to master magic to overthrow some dictator or oppressor to take over as a king. So he studies for alchemy, he studies wizardry, sorcery, thermatology, and electricity. So of course, when you get to the middle of the song, Dave shouts out all five of the magics.
Yeah,
and that's so
cool.
great. That's like the best part of the song, I think, for
Yeah.
me. I love when he repeats that. It's like five magics, and it's so great. Like it's very addictive at that part of the song. But yeah, the riffing is fantastic all the way through it. And at that the 5 minute mark and onwards, wow, it's just like holy shit. It doesn't. Yeah, I agree, Billy. Like Friedman is just he's a master. He's a master guitarist, and it works so well. This is a great song.
I remember reading like because I was trying to look up yesterday just what was Marty's kind of thoughts about this album and how much freedom did he have. And it was interesting. Like he said that, he wanted to, I mean, he worked it out with Dave. When it comes to his solos, he's doing his own thing. I mean, obviously, if the whole band, he said, hated it, like that would be a problem. But he really wanted kind of control of the solo work.
Right.
And he said he's obviously going to listen to what the rest of the band did, and he's not going to do something crazy that doesn't match. And his skill set obviously speaks is all he needs, right? So yeah, I mean, Dave kind of let him let loose, and thank God he did, because yeah, it just Ken said, just the lead works are like the best parts of the songs.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I think this whole album is full of so many memorable riffs and lead works. I love this song too. For me, this album starts off with a 1, 2, 3, 4 punch. It's wicked, and it's not letting up. I love it how this song, like you guys were talking about on a lot of the songs, where it's so long before even the vocals cut in. This one, I think it hits around the 2 minute mark before Dave's vocals even cut in, which is great. You've got all that time to just really thrash around with it. And I love how the guitar work, it raises the song up. Like it starts off slower and then it just kind of raises and elevates the song. I think it's got a great groove to it. And again, another really great drum track on this song. Just absolutely love it. One of my favorites. And I wish, I saw Megadeth a year ago in May, and the set list is generally pretty solid, like pretty static from year to year. He may throw in, I think he threw one song in off the new album, but it would be great. I saw this. I don't know if it was the 30 or 35 year reunion, or sorry, the tour with Slayer when they were doing the tour for Seasons, and they played this in its entirety. You guys, did you guys see that? Yeah,
I saw that tour. Yeah.
Yep.
That was a really good show.
Oh yeah, so I think for where I saw, I think Testament. It was Suicide Silence. I think maybe Testament came in for Machine Head, and then I believe it was, and then they did. I think it was Slayer. They were co-headlining, so Slayer went on first and did Seasons, and then Megadeth did. And I believe they did it all in analog too. So they did it the exact same way that the album was originally recorded in for live. So that just blew my mind. It was absolutely phenomenal show, and you got to see all these songs that they never really play live.
And they had Testament opening, which was great.
Yeah. So. Oh, I mean, you got 3 of the big 4 right there. Like, sorry, 3.
That's what I mean.
I'm throwing
choose a big 4
in there.
Yeah, close enough.
But yeah, it's just amazing. But no, I love this song, and you're 4 songs into this album, and that's what makes this album so damn good. Is it's just like, where are you going from here? And we're heading into Poison Was the Cure, our 5th song here. And Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, again, the song is all right. Like, I'm not a huge fan of it. Obviously, like, the whole song's about Dave's struggle with heroin addiction. That's why he's referring to the poison.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that, like, you get 30 seconds and then it picks up with Menza's drums, and then it just kicks right up with the thrash. I love it. Like, this is kind of a good drum track for Nick, I found. So I really liked him on this. I mean, there's a really good chug at the 140 mark, and yeah, the song is good. It's short. That's not super long. There's not a lot of standout for me on it. Like, I don't mind it, but it's not as good as the first 4. But
yeah,
what do you guys think? I think it's okay.
I agree. I mean, it's probably one of my lesser favorites on the album. It's a great song. I find it's kind of it feels like, I don't know, I feel like the guitar work on it sounds like it came exactly right off of Kill 'Em All in some parts. It's got a really, like, early Metallica kind of groove to it. And I get that feeling. I mean, it's a super fast song. And yeah, the drum track, I think this is a standout drum track for Nick. I think that's for sure. But it's probably, I mean, they all can't be a home run. And for me, it's probably one of the weaker ones on the album. Still like it, but Billy, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Like,
Yeah.
so we're 5 in. That's the weakest of the 5. I actually think the track has a punky feel to it. When I hear it, right? Like, yeah, and I said this, my view, same thing, right? Like, Nick's drumming is quite good in here. The guitar solos at the end are pretty good, but I mean, it's the shortest song so far, right? It's like under 3 minutes. So, I mean, this is the kind of band you got on here where they excel. Like, give them like 2 and 3 minute instrumental passages, right? So you obviously don't get that on that track. So that's a little disappointed for me. But yeah, I mean, I think it's solid, but yeah, it's not the best track on the album.
Wicked. So yeah, and then we're heading into Lucretia, which is I think this was the B-side for Holy Wars. I think this was the B-side release for it. So probably got some extra push there. I think it's a great song. I like it. I'll start off. I like Dave's vocals on it. It's got a killer. I think it's got a really good thrash sound to it. It's got one of the best guitar solos on the album. I really, really like it. Right up there with the first couple of guitar solos in the first couple of songs. So I mean, it's got a really cool. I like the cackle intro there. It's kind of different for sure. And it's just an amazing song. And no, I like it. It definitely better than song 5 in my opinion. And I think it kind of recalibrates the album a little bit and kind of continues along with that kind of pointing towards that. Yes, this is a thrash masterpiece. So what do you think, Bill?
Yeah, no, I kind of agree with you, Jim. Yeah, like I mean, also another bass forward track, right? The bass is really up front in the mix. I agree. I actually like Dave. He does a pretty good range of vocals in the song, so I think that's pretty cool. You actually get the backing vocals back for a little bit on this song, which I think works pretty well. As you say, a good thrash group, but it's got a cool like technical riff. So I kind of like that. That stands out for me. At the, again, going back to Marty at the halfway point, he has a good melodic lead, but then the track really opens up, right? Almost the last half is all instrumental. And so then you get like just everybody ripping and Marty taking the lead. So yeah, I think it's a great, I think it's a good song. Again, it's not 1, 2, or 4, or a couple that's coming.
Yeah,
But again, I still think it's quite strong.
definitely. And what do you think, Ken? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I like this song too. Um, I know that when the album came out, there were a lot of people who were interpreting that his lyrics, he was talking about a ghost that was in his attic, which is not true. But Dave's a really intelligent guy, so like he went and he used a bit of historical context. So like Lucretia is actually a Roman noblewoman who was apparently physically raped, and that rape led to the transition in the Roman period from a monarchy to a Roman republic. So it's kind of interesting how we use that for this song. The cackle at the start is great. I always thought it when I first heard the song, I thought it was like about a witch. I don't know. But after reading about it and like hearing what he had to say about it, I'm like, yeah, this is a really really good song. It's a lot better than Poison Was the Cure. It's pretty good. I like it. I like it overall. And, again, Marty's doing his thing and Nick's doing his thing and everyone, even Nick, Junior's doing his thing. So yeah, it works. It works for a song.
Yeah. I kind of thought the same thing. I thought it was. I'm glad to hear your interpretation of it because I thought it was about a witch as well. To be honest with you,
Yeah,
just from that. I mean, I'm not kind of like what Billy always says. I'm not kind of a lyrics guy. Don't really always get the actual, unless it's right there slamming me in the face of what the song's about. So yeah, no, that's great. So we've, here we are on song number 6, and we're heading into another massive track, number 7, Tornado of Souls. I'll just start off really quick. I mean, what an awesome track. As soon as you hear this, they play it live pretty much all the time. The guitar intro is probably one of the best that you hear that and it's where it's going. It's Megadeth. And Dave's vocals on this, even as like the chorus in that is just so strong. And I think this song was totally made around his vocals, and it just fits. Like the puzzle pieces just fit together, and it just really the drums sound good on it. And I think it was Billy said earlier that they're not down tuning the bass or the drums, and you can really hear it come through in this song. And I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorites, one of my favorite Megadeth songs of all time. And I mean, here you are in song 7, and in my mind, you're getting another masterpiece coming through. So, what do you think, Ken?
Yeah, this is a great song too. I think the opening is what a lot of people were talking about. That it has like this unusual guitar riff, and it's based on like palm muted natural harmonics. So that's kind of it's a bit weird, but it works. And then of course, like you're gonna get you get a classic Friedman solo in the back half, which is fantastic. And I even hear like a hint of Thin Lizzy at the end. There's like this little bit of Thin Lizzy harmonic. I'm like, I could kind of hear it because I know Metallica often would use Thin Lizzy in a lot of their later material, but I hear it. I just hear slight echoes of it here, and I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I actually played it back a couple of times. I'm like, yeah, I could kind of hear it. It's got a little bit of that in there, which is kind of neat. Now, the Tornado of Souls is interesting from a lyrical perspective because it's Dave's. A lot of people were saying Dave was writing a breakup song, but that's not what he says. He's come out and stated that the song itself is He was going through a personal time in his life where it was difficult. So he felt like he was in the eye of the tornado, and that's how he wrote the song. But I think his vocals are really good here. That's the one thing I like about the song. He's got some fantastic vocals. But this is a really, really, really good song.
Yeah, no, that's some good points there. I mean, that it is a wicked, wicked song. What's your thoughts, Billy?
Yeah, I think you guys hit it right. This is the another one of the five masterpieces or so on this album, right? Again, it's that good, memorable opening riff that you guys talked about. I also think one of Dave's better vocal tracks. I mean, but for me, this is all about like the guitar solos and Marty again. Like many people, like I can't believe how many times I've read that Marty's solo break here towards the end is the best guitar solo in metal. Like I don't know if I'd say that. I mean, not that he
Good.
can't be the best guitarist, because I just mean like even on this album, there's some solos I like equally as much as this. But yeah, I mean that's where, and then it even gets a bit intricate, right? When you're listening to the solo section, you also have Dave's bass kind of wrapping around Marty's like guitar lines. Like it's actually quite cool. Like I enjoy it. So yeah, I mean it's it's just great. Like it's has all the best elements of the best songs that we've already talked about, and it all comes together. And that's kind of the trick, right? All these best songs are like 5 minutes and up, right? Like I've said it before, when the band's this talented, you got to give them some time to breathe and open up, right? Like so, yeah, it's a great one.
Wicked, wicked. Well, Billy, take us through song 8, Dawn Patrol. Since
Yeah, so obviously I'm going to get the opposite off that line, right? So it's under 2 minutes. But you know what? Like, I actually like the song, right? Most people rip it. And I know it's kind of cheesy and Dave's doing some kind of weird accent, but like, I like the bass funkiness somewhat to it. And Dave's narrating like vocal approach. And I actually think it's cool. Like, and I don't know why it's a minute and 50 seconds. I think they should have expanded on it, on the idea, and I would have did more with it, right? So it's hard to say it's a masterpiece because it's a minute and 50 seconds, right? Like it's an idea in a mini song, but I don't mind it. Like like I said, I wish they would have brought the idea further.
Yeah,
because the album's only 40 minutes, so you could have did a bit more.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, that's going to be one of my complaints with the one complaint I have. I think there should have been maybe one or two extra tracks on this album. But anyways, we'll get to that. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of an interesting song. It's definitely got an ominous sound, and Dave's eerie vocal kind of spoken word thing is kind of cool. I think it should have been longer as well. I think maybe they were looking at, would have been cool, would have been maybe even taking Dave's spoken kind of the word out of it and just really focusing on maybe a really shredding guitar track here and just making it an instrumental. Yeah. Maybe they were looking at that, and Dave being Dave has to have his voice in there. I don't know, but what's your thoughts, Ken?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. Like the vocals are like I kind of think I hear a little bit of Tom Warrior, just kind of like trying to be a bit tortured, because there was that time when Tom was singing that kind of style too. I don't know. I guess like Billy said, it's a bit of a goof, but it's funky at times. And it's funny you guys are talking about how short it is, because the whole thing is about him talking about society and how, pollution and apathy towards climate change. It's all in the song, which is weird that you wouldn't actually want to write an entire like banger of a song around it. So I think it's all right, but yeah, I wouldn't really call it much of a song either.
Yeah, I don't know if they were in a rush and they kind of had to like pack this thing in, and they didn't have time to bring it any further, because it kind of gets down to, again, like you've got Marty, for Christ's sake, like give him like a 6-minute instrumental.
Exactly.
If you got the time, it's barely above 40 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I mean, I think this should have been turned into an instrumental, and it should have, definitely give them time to go through it. And maybe this is a little bit of Dave's control thing going through, I mean, he's got to be in there. He's got to have his words in there, and it just kind of. But yeah, I think that's my biggest complaint. I mean, we're down to song 9 here. My biggest complaint is I think the album's way too quick for, I think, 1 or 2 extra tracks on here would have really, really boosted it. And I think, they definitely had room for it. That's for sure. But yeah, coming into track 9, Ken, Rust in Peace, Polaris. What's your thoughts?
It's a great closer of a song.
Yeah.
So like, absolutely, and it's also Men's on drums is great. He's standout here. It's a song about nuclear war, so it's right up Dave's alley for the time. I mean, some of these songs lyrically are very, I guess, topical for the time. So yeah, I don't mind it, but there's some great lyrics in here, like I spread disease like a dog. That's such a great line. It's a killer track all the way through. The only thing I'll say about it is that it builds up that crescendo, and then it slows down for a second, and you get that last second part added on, which I don't mind. There's also some nice riffing going on there. It's almost like 2 songs into one. I think that was the point. But yeah, this is great. I think it's a great song for a closing, like on an album, opening and closing.
Yeah, I think it bookends the album. You're right. I usually complain about the closing track, but this one's actually, the last few albums, the closing tracks have been really, really good on the albums we've talked about. But this is awesome, and I love the drum intro, and yeah, this is definitely showcases Nick's drum ability, and it's just a really cool sounding song. And yeah, I get it. I think it's almost like kind of 2 songs in one, almost like Holy War's The Punishment 2, and then you have this kind of bookending it. I don't know if they definitely planned that, but I would assume Dave had control over where everything went, and I think he pulled it off in fine fashion. I know it would have been nice maybe to squeeze another track on here. I think what Billy said about maybe a longer instrumental track would have been, especially with the musicians he has on here, including himself. Include David on that as well. What's your thoughts on the last track there, Billy?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't argue with any of the points. I think you guys kind of hit on everything, right? Like a good sort of strong thrash track. The drums are great. You actually get a Marty lead really early up in the song. That's kind of cool. The bass is still like up there up front, like with David Ellison. The only thing I'd say is there's times on this track where, and this is a nitpick, where I'm not a fan of Dave's vocals. Like a couple of places, like I don't know how to describe that vocal. Like all I can come up with is it sounds kind of cartoony, and I don't know if that describes it, but it's not as serious. Like yeah. So I mean, bottom line, like there's certain sections where I don't like his voice, and it's the only place in the whole album where that comes through for me. And he sort of does that 2 or 3 times in this song, but for the most part, his vocals are fine and they're good. And yeah, and like I think Ken mentioned it, but I like it. Like the song comes to a complete dead stop at like 4 minutes, right? And then that's the best part of the track, right? The next minute and a half is, just some killer like thrash momentum, and Nick's drum work towards the end is really good. And once again, what a surprise! Some good Marty good lead work, and then it kind of all ends with that evil voice at the end. Like it's a cool, it's a good way to end the album for sure.
Yeah, it's the cartoony thing. I hear that at least on every album.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Like even the next album that would be coming up, there's some cartoony bits in it. It's almost like somebody dropped an anvil on his balls. I don't know, but it's and I get it. And there's a lot of people out there, especially online, who can't stand Dave's voice. But there's some songs like Tornado Souls where it fits so well. But I can see that. And when I was writing my notes, I kind of missed. That's one of the tracks I didn't even write in that at all. Anything about Dave's vocals, so I can definitely feel that for sure.
Well, I also think, isn't there like a vocal effect at the start? It sounds like there's a vocal effect where it's muffled, and then all of a sudden he just kicks into the clean singing, which I thought was a bit of a weird transition, but
kind of singing like in an aquarium or something.
Yeah, I noticed that. So I was wondering, is it like some kind of, well, it's done purposely, of course, but yeah, that was the one other thing I noted about that, some of the vocals, but
yeah. Well, here we are at the end of the album. I mean, I think everybody can probably, I don't know, what's your guys' rating on this album?
I got to give it a 10.
Yep.
I agree, Billy. It's like it's a master class for lead guitar work for sure.
Yeah.
Friedman is incredible here, and I've always been a huge Friedman fan. I mean, I love this solo stuff. Everything he's put out has been fantastic in my mind. I mean, really, the two best guitar players they've ever had is, I mean, I put Chris Poland in that ranking because I love Chris Poland. I love his band OHM. That's some great jazz fusion stuff. He's a great guitar player. And then you get Marty, the two best guitar players he's ever had on Megadeth albums. Granted, Chris Poland hasn't been as long as Marty Friedman. But Friedman's an incredible guitar player. I've loved him ever since I've heard him in Cacophony, and I've been following. I used to collect a lot of the Shrapnel records of all the guitar players that came up, and yeah, he's like by far this dude is one hell of a guitar player.
Yeah.
Although you know what's funny, when they did that, I was watching on YouTube when they did that reunion, show in Japan last year. Before. It was weird because they filmed like Megadeth going backstage hanging out with Marty. I think this is before the show. So Marty pulls out some kind of exotic Japanese candy and he's passing it around. And Dave's looking at him like, what the fuck? And you could tell like there's some weird animosity. I don't know, maybe just Dave's like that, but he was like, I don't want your fucking candy. I don't want it. I just don't want it. I thought it was so funny. It was so funny. Watching Dave's reaction to Marty, like, Marty's been living in Japan for years. Like he's like a cultural icon there now.
Yeah, he's a TV star. He's a radio star. He speaks like perfect Japanese.
Yeah, he's huge there.
Yeah.
So I just thought it was funny. It's like Dave just had this look of like, what the fuck? So I don't know, but yeah, Marty's great. I love Marty Friedman.
Yeah, like when I was at Vakken last year in August, because Marty was there with like his solo like Japanese band, and so and Megadeth were there, right? So I knew what was going to happen, because Vakken's famous for special guest stars on the big sets, and so like Marty came out and did all the Rust in Peace songs.
Nice.
And it was like he came out and he showed his respect to the current guitar player and went up and fist pumped him and sort of pointed to him as, you're the man, right? I'm here as like a guest star.
That's cool.
Like there was just something special, right? Like when Marty played, like his stage charisma is probably better than most of the guitars in the band. Like his face, like he just feels like every single note, this man. And so it's coming from the heart, whatever he's writing. Like he's there in his like flannel shirt and his like his flowing hair, but like the crowd went crazy, right? I mean, like there's no doubt there. I mean, I tend to think maybe it's just me who thinks like Megadeth is the Megadeth lineup is with Marty, but there were like 50,000 people there with me who had the exact same feeling, and the best cheers and that were for the Marty songs. So yeah, I just think he's really good live, and I think he just adds a lot to the band live.
Can I ask you guys a question? Just a quick question. What do you guys think? Well, I mean, what I just said about Chris Poland. What do you guys think of Chris Poland? Because I think he's a brilliant guitar player, and I've been following his career as much as I've been following Marty's. What do you guys think of him?
I think he's good. Like I like him. Like I don't think he's quite the same league as Marty, but that's just my fanboyish. Right? I mean, and I agree, he does some cool jazz fusion, but I mean, so does Marty, and Marty does like like Japanese guitar. He does like every type of guitar going. But yeah, I think he's good. Like he's probably my second favorite Megadeth guitarist. Chris.
Do you own Return to Megalopolis?
Huh?
Do you own Chris Poland's Return to Megalopolis?
Yeah.
That's a great album. I love that album.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
And I just picked up his Chasing the Sun album from
Oh, I had that too.
2000.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I got it at a used record store on CD, and I was like, "Oh man, I got to get this." I think he's a great guitarist. I just, the jazz fusion. Hey, a lot of these great guitarists have so much different passions than just metal, and I think that's really, really cool. Even singers like you've got Joey Belladonna, who you guys were talking about, who tends on his off time, or when he's not with Anthrax, he's singing a lot of just more so kind of a classic rock vibe. Yeah. And I think that's pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty neat, but I think that's great. I have a couple of his albums. I just picked that up, and no, it's pretty cool. I think he's a talented guitarist for sure. But yeah, I'm a Marty fan. I'm a fan of that lineup, obviously, and I mean, it's just, the changeovers with Megadeth over the years. I mean, it is what it is. It happens. That's Dave. But yeah, no, I like Chris quite a bit for sure.
Okay, cool. I was just curious because I've always been a fan of his work.
Yeah. I mean, I got a question for you guys. What do you guys think? Like, in 1990 was such a changing, like, holy shit, the amount of great thrash metal coming out. I mean, are we ever we're getting newer thrash metal now coming out as well too, but I really want to have a year like 1990 where we break through with some really smashing albums like this, and do you guys ever think we're going to see this again to this magnitude, or what are your guys' thoughts on that?
No, I don't think so. No, the current musical landscape, it's like these young bands that are coming now. It's like, nah, I don't know. I mean, it could happen, but right now, like there are some really good new thrash bands that are coming up, especially in Europe. Not so much in the States, but Europe is really good for like a lot of these thrash bands. Like they're keeping the spirit going. But I'm not too sure from the American point of view. I don't think so. I don't hear as much of it as it's a lot of the classic thrash bands who are coming back to play or still playing. Maybe Europe would be better. What do you think about that, Billy?
Yeah, no, I mean, 88, 89, 90 is like the heyday of thrash, right? Like, if I were to list my top 100 thrash albums, they'd almost every one would be in those 3 years. Well, a couple in like 87 too, but I mean, they've done everything, right? Like, you can only take it so much further, right? Like, we kind of knock the newer thrash bands to some degree because they sound a bit like the older bands, but that's because like thousands of older bands have done it all already, right? And then we already got the death metal. I mean, we've done everything. Like, you could put a little twist. Like, all you got left to do is like then to mix thrash with classical music, or to mix it with more. I mean, you got to go so extreme that you'd have to leave the genre to really change it up or mix it up. So yeah, I just hope for good, well-written albums and songs by thrash bands who are still going, and new bands, right? But like, I don't think we're ever going to see like this whole wave of a landmark albums, because everything's kind of been done to some degree, I guess.
I tend to think too, the way things can be recorded nowadays. I mean, you can pretty much record an album on your iPhone, and you don't even have to be in the same country. Like, I find that what's missing, like, from a little bit of today's, and maybe this is just me being an older guy, but I find that you need that, a month and a half of living together, sweating it out, doing it every day, late nights, early mornings, throw in whatever else you want, and you get that kind of feel for it. But I don't know. I tend to agree. Yeah, obviously I agree with you guys on that as well. I mean, I guess I yearn for those 87s to 90s, that time again where everything was, I mean, and I guess everything was somewhat fresh and new, and that's probably why they were the forerunners here, and everything was coming out, definitely. Yeah.
That's what I would think. Yeah, you're right about that. The in-person thing is so different now. It's like, now you can do, drum, you can do everything like on your computer, send your track or whatever, and it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same.
Definitely. So, well, that was a great discussion, guys. Now we're heading into where we do our rankings. So we were ranking our top 10 from the big four. So we thought we'd do it a little bit different rather than just ranking specific, take it into a little bit of a direction. So who wants to go first, guys?
I'll go first.
You? Yeah, wicked. Go for it.
Okay. So top 10 for the big four.
Yeah.
All right.
I know there's probably going to be an Anthrax album in there.
Oh, you think?
Maybe not for everybody.
Well, sure. That's true. All right. So, we'll read it off. And at number 10, I have State of Euphoria, which is an album that I love. I love the writing in that album. For me, it's one of those albums that I've always loved lyrically. I play it all the time. I never not play it. Number 9, now this might be a blasphemy for some, but I have Ride the Lightning, which I like the album. It's a strong Metallica album, but I think they have way better albums that have come after. I still like it. It's still pretty good. I listen to it, sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8, I have South of Heaven.
Nice.
I like Slayer, but I don't know. Growing up for me, they're a band I liked as a thrash fan, but they weren't the two that I listened to the most. But yeah, I have a number 8. It's a really good album. Number 7, I'm putting Persistence of Time. I love that album a lot. We've talked about this album to death many, many times. Such a dark Anthrax album. Number 6, I'm putting Rain in Blood. Now, that might also be blasphemy for some, but I mean, I like Rain in Blood. It's great, but, I just, there's other albums in this ranking that I just kind of prefer. Number 5, I have Rust in Peace. It is a good album. I do enjoy it. Although now, number 4, I put Peace Sells. Now, it's just the OG for me. It was the first album I heard before Rust in Peace. I like them both. I think they're both equally good. But then again, I like Chris Poland too. So I'm kind of in the middle, guys. I'm a Poland fan. I'm also a Friedman fan. So there are two albums that I just have a hard time ranking one over the other. Number 3, And Justice for All. I love that album a lot. We've talked about that many, many times. I put Master of Puppets number 2 ahead. And again, it's only because it was the first Metallica album that I really heard and got into. And Master, I played quite a bit when it came out. It was something I played to death as soon as I bought it. And I think you might know my number 1 pick, and it's obviously Anthrax Among the Living, which is the album I played to death the most. So that's my ranking.
Wicked.
It's hard to do a ranking though, because I don't know, I'm saying this now, but maybe tomorrow I might think something a bit different.
Oh, for sure.
It's just, that's how I would look at it as of today.
And Billy, go for it, man.
Yeah, so mine's going to be a little bit different. The whole time, Ken threw me off because I probably could have squeezed. You guys might remember Persistence of Time was my favorite.
Yep.
I probably could have put that as my number 10, actually. Okay. So I had Slayer Seasons in the Abyss as my number 10. But for me, I know this is one of the more popular Slayer albums, but it's one of my least favorites, actually. There's tracks I love, like War Ensemble and like Skeletons of Society, but some of the very popular, like the title track and Dead Skin Mass, I just don't like those tracks.
I love that. I love Dead Skin Mass.
I don't like them. I don't know. It's not for me. And everything else was kind of average. So I don't know. For this album, just didn't click with me. Like, you're going to see every other Slayer album is in my top 10, but in reality, I'm going to say I was probably just biased and left Anthrax right out, but I think Persistence of Time is better than Seasons in the Abyss. So I'm going to officially replace that as my number 10.
All right,
William, well, there you go. Ken, there
Thanks,
you go.
thanks to Ken. So my number 9 is I Megadeth Peace Cells. I think there's for me anyways, there's a major gap between that and Rust in Peace. So I've got Rust in Peace much higher. But yeah, I mean, what a huge leap from Killing Is My Business, right? Like in production and songwriting and musicianship, so many great songs on there. Like I love The Conjuring.
It's a good song.
Obviously the title track and Devil's Island. There's a lot of really good songs there, but no Marty, and so it's got to be ranked at back. So I kind of feel exactly like Ken here. My number 8, I don't know if we're in the same spot, but I got Metallica Ride the Lightning. Definitely my third favorite Metallica album. Again, like I love Creeping Death and For Whom the Bell Toll, and the title track and Fade to Black. They're all great, but the next two is more where it's at for me. Number 7, Slayer's Show No Mercy, going really old school. Like, I mean, Slayer's from a total catalog perspective, not so much the post 2000, but that's my favorite of the big four. If I look at all the body of work, so yeah, I love it. It's very raw, obviously, but the Antichrist, Die by the Sword, Black Magic, the title track, they're all classics. Number 6, I think I'm around where Ken was. Slayer, South of Heaven. I mean, how do you follow up one of the most shred fest thrash albums? You slow it down and you get heavier, right? Like, so it's really cool. Lots of great tracks there. For me, number 5, second Slayer album, Hell Awaits. Again, so many classics. Like, I love Hell Awaits. At Dawn They Sleep is one of my favorites.
That's a wicked song.
Yeah, Slayer tracks. I mean, Kill Again, Crypts of Eternity. I mean, so many classics there. Number 4, Metallica, Master of Puppets. So it's not my favorite Metallica album, but it's a close second. And everybody knows this, but I'll give them credit. I mean, probably next to my Slayer Rain in Blood album coming up. It probably has one of the best opening and closing tracks. So does Justice too, but you get Battery and Damage Incorporated on Master of Puppets, and great variety, right? There's some doomy songs and you get the big instrumental. Yeah, kudos to them. Number 3's Rust in Peace. We just talked about that. 2 is Slayer, Rain in Blood. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it opens and closes with with probably the best thrash songs ever written, Angel of Death and Raining Blood.
I would agree with that.
Right, they bookend the album, and it's a very short album, but everything in between is quite good too. I mean, not as strong as those two. And then, as we said, my favorite metal album is "And Justice for All."
Nice.
So, yeah, I mean, we did a whole podcast on it recently, so I won't get into that.
Cool,
wicked. Well, I got a little bit of everything, but I do, Ken. Just like Billy, who gave you some kudos, I'm going to be giving you some when I hit mine, because I changed my number 1 Anthrax album from the last podcast where I said it was Fistful of Metal. So I'm changing it up. I've been listening. I've been listening to a ton of Anthrax because of our podcast. So anyway, so I'll get to that. But number 10, I got Seasons in the Abyss, Dead Skin Mask. Oh man, Hollowed Point. One of my favorite songs, Skeletons of Society. I mean, I know what Billy's saying. It's probably more this was kind of maybe their Black album to some degree. But I mean, it kicks the Black Album's ass. I mean, it's just awesome. I love Dead Skin Mask. That is a wicked song. Oh man, it's wicked. And
I always go for beer when they play that song.
Oh, no way.
Every time.
Oh no, man, that's right.
No, that's wicked. That's so funny. Number 9, I got kind of a weird one, but I love this album. I've got Megadeth, So Far So Good So What, and I know I'll get a lot of flack. I had Peace Cells here, crossed it off, but So Far So Good, cross it off. and then keep going until I finally decided on So Far So Good So What. I love that album. It's such an angry Megadeth album. This should have been probably the first album. Him coming back from the bus, getting fired, getting canned. He should have put So Far So Good So What out first. I think it definitely a much angrier album. I mean, Peace Sells is a wicked album too. I love Devil's Island off
But
that.
Jim, but don't you think Jeff Young is underrated though?
Absolutely. That's the next thing I was going to say. And you know, I got kind of a little bit of a raw deal there. The only thing I hate about the album is they do that shitty rendition of Anarchy in the UK. But they do have Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols on there doing a guitar solo. So that's kind of cool. It saves it. But I you know, if I don't hear Anarchy in the UK ever again, other than from the Sex Pistols, I'm okay with that.
I agree with you.
You know, every band has done that. My number 8 is Rain and Blood. You know, Slayer's going to be heavy spotted throughout this. You know, it could even be higher, probably, depending on the day. Number 7, Justice, Metallica. Metallica, you know, I'm not going to say anything else about them because they just, there's a lot of Metallica on here too, and I'm only at number 7. Number 6, Ken, this is for you, man. Among the Living. You know, I gotta admit, I didn't realize I love that album as much as I do. But I got another thing too, State of Euphoria. I've been spinning the hell out of that as well. That's a wicked, underrated album.
Yeah.
And I think that's another great album. And you know, as much as I like to be somewhat of the guy who likes, I mean, I like Killing Is My Business for Megadeth, but I have to admit, it's obviously not, you know, it wouldn't be in, you know, it'd be in my probably top 6 Megadeth albums. You know, and I'm looking at Fistful of Metal from that way as well, after listening to them over and over again for the last week. But anyways, Among the Living at number 6. Number 5, my Slayer album of all time favorite is South of Heaven. Love that album. But I'm talking like, even between, and I love like their newer stuff. Like I love Christ Illusion. These are points that this album would beat out, say, you know, Hell Awaits or Rain and Blood or whatever. It's just points, decimal points, like point. But anyways, I love that album. Number 4, Master of Puppets. I gotta have it in there. With what, you know, you guys talked about it. It's probably, you know, at that point in time, you know, it's a great album, and I can't debate that at all. I don't think there's a bad track on it. I like the other first 2 probably better, which why at number 3 I've got Ride the Lightning, one of my favorite albums. Number 2 is this album, Rust in Peace. Love it. My favorite Megadeth album of all time, and my second favorite. My first favorite is, and I've talked about this a million times, is Metallica Kill 'Em. It's Kill 'Em All. I don't know if it's because of how I bought it. You know, this was my intro into just everything, changed my life. Love that album. I love how it sounds. I love how a lot of people I've been reading online say, "Oh, it's so juvenile, it's this." But, and you know what? And I think it ties in obviously with Metallica, because Mustaine wrote a lot of the riffs for it, the 4 songs, and you know, and then 2 off a ride. So it does have a heavily Mustaine kind of feel to it in some degree. And I think that's why I'm such a Megadeth fan as well. And I think that runs hand in hand with a lot of Metallica. They tend to like Megadeth as well. I don't pit them against each other. I do for fun, I guess. But, you know, and I think it was Billy, you said earlier in the podcast, I don't understand why Dave, you know, being second place to Metallica, if they are second place, I mean, Slayer's there too, but coming in like that, everybody's second place to Metallica with the fame and the fortune that they've amassed with their first bunch of albums. You know, I think anybody coming in second to that is, you know, that's nothing to sneeze at or nothing to scoff at. So he really should check himself. But that Kill 'Em All album is just, in my mind, a masterpiece. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
So we all have our standard, like, you know, Yeah, Billy's is justice. I'm among, and you're like kill 'em all. It's every time we do a ranking, that's always like our number one. It's never changing.
And what I like about Injustice for All is Billy totally changed my view on it. Because I think I jumped on the kind of like you did with Among the Living, because I always would complain about the bass, but like I love it when Billy said, you know what? It sounded lo-fi on my system. I played the tip down, and I tell you,
when he said that.
Yeah. Freaking awesome, man.
That's funny.
You remember that, Billy?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
That's funny.
That was wicked. So it's a new way. That's what I do. I just turn the bass massive up on my system and boom the shit out of it. You know what? Jason Newsted comes alive. I don't care.
Wow, it is a great album. No, there's no question about that. It's a great album.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
How could it not be?
Yeah. So that's it, guys. What else you guys got? We should announce. Somebody want to announce our next show? What's our next show on?
Well, since Slayer is a theme here today, we are going to be doing South of Heaven next week, which would be kind of cool. I'm looking forward to that. South of Heaven. Right. Everyone likes that album. I don't think none of us don't like it. So
I think we all had it within one or two places of each other.
Yeah. I mean, I generally think it's a great album. I love the album cover art. The artist is great. Yeah, it's a solid album. So
yeah,
no disagreement here.
I always, I love about Slayer albums, but I read an article. I think it was Kerry King for God Hates Us All. So I think you remember. Do you guys remember the first? Like there was the band copy, which was the Bible with all the nails sticking out of it.
Yeah. I remember that.
So he said that. He was like, "What the hell was this? What the hell were we doing?" He wrote in an article I was reading, and he said, like this is ridiculous. It looked like a grade 8 art project trying to make it look satanic. We got this Bible, we did all this, because then they came out with the cover that was a lot different. I believe it was God Hates Us All. I think it was that one.
I think so, yeah. You're probably right about that.
Yeah. But
the most controversial thing about Slayer is the arm when that person did was it the crucifix?
Yes.
They cut into their arm. That was so freaking freaky when I saw that photo.
Yeah. Or they wrote Slayer in their arm.
Slayer, yeah.
That's right. They wrote Slayer, right. With razor blades.
Yeah, that's insane. People are crazy.
Well, I mean, Sid Vicious did it when he toured America. True. He did it in his chest with a busted beer bottle. So,
crazy.
What do you do? Anyways,
crazy
guys.
Kids.
So, Ken, you're not going to do that this weekend, right? Thrashcast across your chest?
No, Billy, I don't think I'm that much of a wild man, but no, I'll pass. But
well, we are becoming kind of a cult, so we need to do something.
True.
We have shirts. There you go.
We got shirts.
That's right. You got to get that in there. Well, I'll say this. I mean, since we're talking about it, like, okay, so we released an Alice Cooper video that we did for Horror Metal Sounds, and that's gotten a lot of views. So we are going to be doing, I'll announce it here anyways, because it's not a secret now. We're going to be doing an Anthrax one. So we're going to be discussing Anthrax and their connections to 80s horror, which will be kind of cool. So we're working on that now. We're tying it into Thrashcast, so you'll be able to see it pretty soon, hopefully in the next month. So
nice.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool.
And everybody should check out that Alice Cooper. That's phenomenal. Lots of great information on it, and wow, blew me. I so many, like, I was looking at the list of movies and stuff, and one of my favorite old school B movies is Class of 1984.
Yeah, yes.
He did the lead song for it for I'm the Future.
I'm the Future.
That was wicked. Was that on an album? Like, or was that just for that movie?
I think it's just for the movie. I don't think it's actually on one of his albums. Yeah, Not that I know of.
What a wicked song, and I mean, what a wicked movie for, you're thinking, God, you go back and watch it. It's on Tubi right now, and I watched it the other day after I saw the Alice Cooper video, and I was like, my God, this was supposed to be how the class was going to be in 1984, going to school. You know, and Michael J. Fox, that was before he was Michael J. Fox. He was just Michael Fox. He was a young guy in the movie being
That's
bullied.
right.
And yeah, that was really, really cool. I mean, you know, they're kind of a punker, drug dealing, kind of, they were the misfits at school, and they ended up, anyways, a wicked movie. I remember watching that when I was a kid, going like, oh yeah, the schools are gonna collapse. Anyways, that was a little off.
No, that's no worries, no problem.
I
So the
haven't seen it.
Anthrax, so the Anthrax video will cover. We'll be covering like Stephen King. We'll be covering the comic book connection and all that stuff. So it'll be fun. We have a little clip from Married with Children in it, so you'll be able to see that. And it'll be fun.
Cool.
What were you gonna say, Billy?
Oh, I don't remember what I said something. Yeah, I forgot already.
Cool, guys. Well, if that's, you guys got anything else, I think that's about
No.
it.
Yeah, we're all
Perfect.
good to go.
I'm good.
Yeah, me
Great.
too.
Well, you guys have a great night, everybody.
Yes, sir.
All right.
See you later.
See you later.